Party. It's my pleasure today to welcome Representative Kevin Chambliss. Representative Chambliss was elected first in 2020 as the representative for House District 117. Many folks, if they hear House District 117, will not have the slightest idea of what that means, what part of Miami-Dade County it means. Tell us a little bit about your district.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thanks so much for having me here. So House District 117 covers the beautiful communities of Florida City, Homestead, Goulds, Naranja, Leisure City, South Miami Heights, West Perrine, and it ends on this northern end in Richmond Heights. Now, if you're in the Homestead, Florida City community, it doesn't cover the entire cities, but it's majority of Florida City as well as the eastern side of US 1 for Homestead. So that's the Villages, and that's the Keys Gate community.
Okay. What's your favorite part of the district? What's really special? What makes it home?
Lucy Street. Lucy Street in Florida City is such a beautiful atmosphere to me because it really reminds me of home. Where, I say everybody knows your name. When you're driving down Lucy Street, and one of my favorite restaurants used to be there, Claudia B's, and I used to love going there in the morning. People going on their way to work, coming to pick up some breakfast. The kids going to school, saying, "Hey, Mr. Chambliss," or "Hey, Coach Chambliss." It's really the center of a very vibrant community, both culturally as well as economically. It's the border between the city of Homestead and the city of Florida City, and it is the first place that I began going door to door in back in 2010 when I first came to the community. I was going door to door in Florida City and Southwest Homestead, and many of those families are the reason I became a state representative.
There are a lot of new families, though, in the district as well. Tell me a little bit about what's going on in terms of new construction, development, and so forth.
We've definitely had a residential development boom. I can't keep up with the number of developments that are happening, and not just housing developments where you're building houses or single family homes. We're having a lot of multifamily home developments that are not necessarily being built out, they're being built up. So definitely a population boom, a population shift for the county and the state. We're talking about in the tens of thousands of new residents that have just in the last couple of years become a member of the South Dade community, especially around that Naranja Leisure City area. We've seen significant development there around there in US 1, but then we've seen neighborhoods being built in the Homestead, Florida City area. So everywhere is growing. There's two things. One, yes, we did need the inventory as a matter to address our affordable housing crisis. But again, many residents feel that this is a little too many new developments and is not being matched with infrastructure and commercial development. So hopefully we're asking them to slow down so our communities can keep up. But it is a growing and thriving community.
Which brings me to the main purpose of what I wanted to address today, because you just got back from Tallahassee, and congressional maps were redrawn and ostensibly to reflect changes in population, even though you were using or let us say those who drew the maps were using the data from the 2020 census, and Congressional District 27, Congressional District 28, which overlap with House District 117, didn't really change that much. So the
population changed, but the map didn't change. Doesn't that sound weird? There's a lot of weird stuff going on. Thanks for the intro to that. Because as I mentioned, it was a map that we did not see population shift being accounted for. Saw a lot of things being accounted for. And when we talk about drawing the map, we're talking about one person. Not a team, not a committee, one person drawing a map that they said was race neutral. They kept saying that, and they kept wanting us to talk about race, and we know that obviously this does disenfranchise Black and brown communities. We already knew that. We knew that was the intent a long time ago, back when they began to attack the Voting Rights Act. Was back in 2012, from the 2012-2013 year. That's when we begin to see attacks on the Voting Rights Act that happened. That's one of the reasons why in that Senate case, different Senate seats were redrawn differently, and we lost some representation there. So we knew that was the agenda. Here's the interesting thing that we learned. It wasn't the only agenda. The map drawer directly admitted to using partisan data when drawing a map. Again, wasn't using race data, but was choosing to use partisan data. So yeah, we think this map is unconstitutional.
So you were on the Special Committee on Redistricting in 2022,
yes, ma'am.
Which is the normal time for redrawing districts and
yes,
rebalancing them. And you were on the committee again this year in
yes,
2026. Run through the differences in terms of what your procedure was in 2022 versus what happened this year.
Well, thank you for that. There's a lot of differences. The first difference was public input. Literally, we had on our website an app to where the regular citizen or the regular organization from the community could get on that app and draw their own map. It was a map making tool to which they could draw maps, see how maps are drawn, and potentially submit those maps for consideration. That kind of public input was just not there. We had time, because this wasn't just a one committee hearing. We had time to learn about the process, the constitutional process that we're supposed to embark on. But then we also had options. The map makers, one of which was the one person who drew the map this time, he was with a team of people. They submitted to us multiple maps. After they submitted them to us, we had time to look at them, go back with our policy analysts and discuss them. We had time to set up appointments with them and ask them questions about certain communities, about certain districts. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Plenty of time to engage in the process. None of that, not one inkling of it happened. According to the map maker, only one person was drawing a map. Now, he also admitted that he consulted with people who he did not admit to who those individuals were. So he did consult with other people, but he was the sole map maker using partisan information to draw maps. You just can't get away from the partisan intent. The intent that was mentioned in drawing the maps had everything to do with the case going on in Louisiana. Not only did they not wait, because it did, if you remember, on the day of the vote, the ruling came out. Not only did they not allow us to pause and to analyze what that ruling actually means, but they did not even defend the maps. And so now we have an unconstitutional map, and we got to do something about it.
So the Louisiana ruling you are speaking out about is Louisiana v. Calais,
yes,
which
ma'am.
was a challenge to the Voting Rights Act. And the assumption on the part of the office of the governor had been that it would be completely nullified, and that actually did not happen.
It did not happen.
But apart from the ruling in Louisiana, we in Florida since 2010 have had the Fair District amendments, which specifically state that partisan intent may not be used, or the desire to keep an incumbent or kick out an incumbent may not be used. So the argument that the governor's office used was, well, if the preservation of minority rights is struck down, and it was their assumption that it would be, but it wasn't quite.
That's right.
That every other part of that citizen-initiated amendment that passed in 2010 with 63% of the public voting in favor, that would fail as well. And
it's just not how the law works. Definitely not how the law works. And it's so interesting because when we're talking about the amendment process and the process for citizens to propose an amendment, or the legislature to propose an amendment for the voters to decide, we've talked about that in recent years, and this was a situation in which the process worked. We're talking about over 60% of the voters supported this. This is a clear bipartisan effort and mandate from the voters, and this legislature, unfortunately, the majority of them voted to basically ignore the mandate by the voters. Ignoring the mandate by the voters, but also ignoring common sense, because you had been given an information that there was partisan intent calculated in these maps, which would make them unconstitutional, and they supported them anyway.
Yes, and the governor today has indeed signed the bill. The bill went to the governor, and zippo, there it was. It was signed. So there were in the Senate a couple of Republicans who voted against this. And the speech, for example, of Senator Jennifer Bradley, who is up from northeastern Florida, indicated that the ruling had not come down, and as written, the bill was unconstitutional in her view. Two Republican senators from Miami-Dade likewise voted against this, as well as the former Democrat and current NPA, Senator Pizzo, also from Miami-Dade, as well as a slice of Broward. In the House, however, there was only one Republican, former Democrat Hillary Cassell, who voted against it. And I listened both to your committee hearing, the select committee, as well as the floor debate. And apart from the Republican sponsor, Representative Persons Mullica, no Republican spoke whatsoever. I understand that since this is likely going to the courts for settlement,
yes, ma'am.
Maybe by the time we have finished this discussion, the lawsuit will have been filed.
Right.
I think it was just waiting for the ink to dry on this signature. But legislators are likely to be deposed in any court proceeding. Did you hear anything in the hallways from your Republican colleagues? Did you see any eyes roll? Or did you see any noses being held?
I saw a lot of people who are very aware of the process because they served with me in 2022 on many of those redistricting committees. I saw some lawyers. They're very smart, smarter than me, and they can read legal documents very accurately. And I heard crickets, both in committee and on the floor. It did not seem that anybody wanted to champion the defense of this map. I've seen them champion some very interesting things in the past in which they spoke up because they thought that it was important. Nobody felt that this map was worth defending and or wanted to be the one to articulate that defense. That says a lot. That lets us know that it is what we think it is. I'm very confident in the lawsuit process because I think that partisan intent has overwhelmingly been demonstrated. I think that you have to start there. And again, we're not everybody else. In Florida, we have fair districts, and we have them for a reason. The fact that we would even propose this type of solution, knowing that we don't have accurate population data, doesn't make sense in the first place. We are stuck with 28 congressional districts. So to redraw congressional districts would not be able to account for any kind of undercount that you thought may have happened. We're not looking at population shift from one geographical area to another, but we're looking at partisan data when we're drawing the maps. What is it, around 40% of Republicans in the state of Florida? Double that is the representation on this map. Over 80% of this map are Republican congressional districts. I'm sorry, 2 + 2 still equals 4. You can try to convince people that 2 + 1 = 4, but it's going to be really, really hard to do. Unfortunately, it seemed like somebody convinced them of that because they supported this map. But it's very, very obvious that this is an inaccurate, partisanly written or drawn map as per the map maker, and therefore I think it should be struck down as unconstitutional.
Yes, it's very ironic indeed. Florida is recognized as having had an undercount of the 2020 census. And I know a number of people from both parties who were urging people to fill out the census forms and so forth. However, the governor did not devote much funding or support to the census effort, despite a number of folks advocating that more money be spent. And we did have a significant undercount, which actually has resulted in the state of Florida getting fewer federal dollars for federal programs that may very well have helped out folks in House District 117. They would have been able to benefit from some of those dollars. But here we are. What it's resulted in is an allegation, well, Florida is undercounted, so we've got to change the maps. I'm going to go back to 2022. The maps were already changed, first by the legislature, the congressional maps, and then those maps were vetoed back in 2022. And the governor submitted his own map, which eventually passed. And so I saw one comment on social media, Governor, please don't complain about the 2022 maps as being unrepresentative or unfair. You drew them. So
I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. But it does. The timing, the communication that we've seen, this is clearly in response to what's happening nationally. It's plain as day. You can't get around that, and that is why again, this was illegal. This was unconstitutional. It was also illogical because it just doesn't make logical sense. And so I think these maps will not stand the muster of a constitutional challenge, and they shouldn't be used in this November's election.
Yes. Do you think there will be consequences for those who voted to support the map? Because polling that I saw, there have been a couple of polls
Right.
conducted, and the voters of Florida are not happy about this particular process being pushed. I do remember in the state of Indiana, the Republican majority, and they did indeed have a majority, enough of those Republican legislators stood up against the very partisan call nationally to redistrict Indiana, as Texas had done. And they stood up and said no. Florida needs to consume a little more corn or something like that.
Well, I was hoping that we saw a lot more of them speak up about this, being that it's so important. I mean, these are very, very consequential votes. This might have been one of the most consequential based on the fact that it talks about people's direct representation. We did see a little bit, definitely on the Senate side, not only a vote against these unconstitutional and illegal maps, but also, spoke to explain their vote as well. I don't know how the consequences will lie. Are there consequences for not voting with the bloc, and are there consequences from constituents that are saying, hey, like, we believe in your policies, like we're with you, but like this is too much.
It's over the line.
Like you are very clearly rigging the system. We would prefer you just run on your policies and be right or wrong and let us decide. In other words, letting the citizen decide who they vote for, not dictating who the citizen votes for as the elected. I mean, and we didn't even get this an opportunity to go to the voters in November and let them eventually decide on the map, which other states have done. This was a process that happened within 24 hours. A very short amount of time in which a map was presented, a very short amount of time in which data could have been analyzed, and there was not another option given. And for all those reasons, we know that this was pushed, it was forced, and it's illegal.
Yes, indeed. California had a popular vote, whether they should redistrict or not. Virginia as well. And both have been cited. Oh, well, they are redistricting. Turnabout is fair play. But yes, as you mentioned, the popular will was expressed.
Yeah.
And so a majority of the voters did indeed vote to redistrict in those two states. Do you think that we are now in for an era of redistricting every Tuesday and Wednesday? Are we setting a really bad precedent?
Absolutely, especially when people are openly identifying what they consider loopholes in the Constitution to justify this act. There needs to be both federal and state legislation that tightens up, confirms and tightens up fair districts here in Florida, but even nationally. This is not something that we can leave to a tit-for-tat game between two parties. We have to close up that loophole, and we have to make sure that our process of not only gathering census data, but how it's used to create representation matters. That's why, again, the original protections in the Voting Rights Act mattered. Because many times there were checks and balances. In some states, there used to be a situation where you had to submit your maps to the federal government.
Yes,
so that
indeed.
they could justify that there was no discrimination or that you didn't change lines or draw districts for discriminatory reasons. Because those protections aren't here today, you're seeing the wild, wild west when it comes to map making. People can just create their own rules. I use Mississippi as an example with its congressional districts. It's always had that one singular congressional district when half the state is black. Easy, half the state of Mississippi is black, but always only had that one congressional district, and it never deviated from that. Anybody with simple, any kid could probably draw a better map than they have in the map in the state of Mississippi. And it seems like other states are following play. The number of Republicans to the number of Democrats to the number of independents is not even close to being represented in these new maps. We heard testimony that partisan data was used in drawing these maps. These maps are unconstitutional.
And they are not as conforming to the usual process, apart even from the question of using partisan data. There are more counties that are divided.
More cities that are divided.
More cities.
We were trained in the first round in 2022 when we were doing this. They told us that there needed to be boundaries that abided by municipality as much as possible, keeping cities as whole as much as possible, as well as using natural boundaries like lakes, highways, streets. Those could be used. But the goal was that cities and counties would be voting for the same person as much as could be allowed. This deviates from that. So this is a worse map than we had, with only partisan data used in making it, not accurate population data, not accurate population mobility data. I just don't get it. I don't.
Well, lack of information and lack of process, it seems to be now a recurring theme, because you're going to be heading back for yet another special session.
Yes, ma'am.
On the budget. Have you seen a budget? Apart from what was submitted way back, when was it? February?
Yeah, we've seen that. We've seen some newer allocation models. We haven't seen how that breaks down. And those allocation models we have not seen them in an official format. As kind of released to the media, if you will. So we know that there's a lot of stuff that we already had questions about in the budget. So we're hoping that we can, dive deep into it. It's an important part. This is what we're constitutionally mandated to do. So I look forward to doing that and making sure that Deep South Dade gets its fair share, that Miami-Dade County gets its fair share. We're gonna fight to make sure that public schools get their fair share, because we know that many times they don't. Along with other issues that we've consistently been advocating for in the budget. We will see if this is a more favorable product than we had before we died.
Yes, there were things in the Senate budget that perhaps the House could yield on. I've always found those budget hearings a little frustrating for the public, because the public finds out afterwards.
After the conversation.
But
yeah, I'm on the full budget committee, which means I'm an at-large conferencee across the committees, and so I will be watching, and I'll be paying a lot of attention to what's going on. I can't wait to get back and actually do our job, compared to this other stuff they be having us doing sometimes.
Yes, this as well, and then there may be yet another special session on property tax. I think that, which is, you just love Tallahassee, I'm sure.
Yeah. Kayla and KJ and me and Montreal, the kids, they love me home. So let's have more conversation about getting the job done when we can, instead of always having a special session. But it's what we signed up for. My family's very supportive, so we'll go get the job done.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure having you, and I'm going to wish you good luck with your budget endeavors, and look forward to speaking with you after the final session, whenever
whatever that